passenger door first, and David followed, but as he emerged, he was shot in the head at point-blank range. Panicked, Betty Lou began to run, and she was shot 5 times in the back. As the young couple lay dying, the Zodiac killings had begun. I mean, these poor kids, 16 and 17 years old, you guys. 7 months later, in a secluded parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park, 22-year-old Darlene Farron and 19-year-old Mike McGew were having a late-night rendezvous. A car pulled into the lot and parked just a few feet away. A man exited the vehicle and walked toward the couple, shining a flashlight. They thought it was a cop, and Mike and Darlene were fumbling for their IDs when, without words or warning, the man began firing at the couple inside the car. 5 shots rang out before the man slowly walked back to his own car. But he stopped before reaching it. The wounded Mike was crying out in pain. The stranger returned and fired 2 more bullets into each victim. And that's when Mike saw the killer up close and personal. Somehow, Mike survived. A call came into the Vallejo Police Department 5 minutes later from a man claiming responsibility for the attack. He correctly identified the weapon used, a 9mm, and he told them something else. He was the person responsible for murdering the couple the prior December. Within months, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Examiner, and the San Francisco Chronicle received handwritten letters from this man claiming to have killed David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, and Darlene Farron. Police confirmed the claim was genuine. Only the killer could possibly have known details of these crimes that were included in the letters. But 1/3 of each letter was a puzzle, a complex cipher including more than 50 shapes and symbols to represent the 26 letters of the alphabet. My contacts are so blurry. The code, if solved, could reveal the killer's identity, but investigators were stumped. The letter-writing spree continued as the brutal serial killer, who referred to himself in his writings as the Zodiac, baffled police and terrorized Northern California residents. The Zodiac killer then changed tactics when he approached Cecilia Ann Shepard and Brian Calvin Hartnell as they relaxed on a blanket by a lake in Napa Valley. This time, he spoke to the victims, claiming he was a recent prison escapee who needed money and a car. He then tied the couple up with a plastic clothesline and began to violently stab them. Shepard died from her injuries, but Hartnell lived to tell the terrifying tale of the man who calmly walked away after leaving the couple to die, bound and bleeding. The Zodiac killer called authorities an hour later to claim responsibility for the attack and the murder. The Zodiac's last confirmed killing was claimed via letter sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. In the envelope was a portion of a bloody shirt that the Zodiac claimed came from a man he'd murdered. The San Francisco Police Department confirmed that the shirt did in fact belong to the murder victim, Paul Stein, a taxi driver who had been robbed of his wallet and keys and shot to death inside his taxi on a neighborhood street in full view of several witnesses. Police recovered gloves and bloody fingerprints from the cab, and they now held the missing portion of Stein's shirt that had been torn off. They knew the Zodiac was a white male with a stocky build, a round face, and brown hair, but none of these things led them to a suspect. In one of his last letters to the news media, the Zodiac killer claimed to have murdered 37 unsuspecting victims over a 5-year reign of terror. And then suddenly, he simply stopped. The Zodiac's brazen callousness and elusiveness has been reenacted in books and on screen. His methodology, meticulously studied by code breakers and forensic scientists. In December of 2020, after 50 years, amateur sleuths solved the Zodiac Killer's second cipher, which said in part, "I hope you are having fun, lots of fun trying to catch me." But the 340 character cipher didn't help reveal his identity. In October of 2021, cold case investigators, the case breakers, declared the Zodiac Killer to be Gary Francis Post, who had died a few years earlier. But the police have rejected this theory, and as of writing this case is still open. After 5 decades, the Zodiac Killer has never been definitively identified. So, this case just completely, the fact that he could murder so many people and just walk away is so bizarre to me. It's crazy. Okay, I'm gonna go take my contacts out really fast. I'm gonna hit the mute button. I will be right back. Okay, right back. Okay, super speed, so sorry. Hope that wasn't too long. Alright, so the next one is the Tylenol poisonings. This is Mary McFarland on her wedding day. And it says, Helen weeps on her daughter Teresa Jones's casket. That's so sad. This case is bizarre too. If you don't know it, stick with me. It began with a little girl with a sore throat in a Chicago suburb. Early on the morning of September 29th, that's my birthday, 1982. Not my birth year. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman told her mother and father she wasn't feeling well, and her parents gave her 1 extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Before breakfast, Mary was dead. It would prove to be a very busy day for Chicago area first responders. Just 11 miles from the Kellerman home, 27-year-old Adam Janus died suddenly of an apparent heart attack. His brother and sister-in-law met friends and family at Adam's house to mourn together. Likely from the stress of Adam's death, Adam's brother Stanley and wife Teresa both had throbbing headaches. They saw a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol capsules, the same pills Adam had taken, and they each took a couple. Before the day was out, Stanley was dead, and Teresa's death took 2 more agonizing days. Can you imagine? Chicago would be hit with 3 more sudden deaths in the following days. response. The Tylenol scramble is today referred to as the recall that started them all. And it worked. More unsold capsules containing lethal amounts of cyanide were discovered in bottles on store shelves in the Chicago area. Luckily, never sold to the public. McNeil and Johnson & Johnson offered an unprecedented $100,000 reward for anyone with information leading to the conviction of the person responsible. Shortly thereafter, the company received a ransom letter demanding $1 million for the tampering to stop. But the man captured by authorities for sending this letter was found not to be responsible for the killings. He was just a would-be extortionist who received a 20-year prison sentence for his efforts. Punk. 4 decades later, easily doctored gelatin capsules are long gone, and medicines and many other products have incorporated multi-tamper-resistant barriers. But no one was ever convicted or even charged in these 7 Tylenol murders. This is the ransom letter. People are crazy. The Highway of Tears is such an intense case. I would love to actually cover it on my channel at some point more comprehensively than this. And if you'd like me to do that, definitely tell me that. I covered another case that was involving the Highway of Tears, but it is not about these women. At least I don't believe. Let me read. The names are so... No, okay. Alright. The 14-year-old's decomposed, partially clothed body was found by tracking dogs in thick brush adjacent to a private logging road. It had been 4 months since Monica Ignis was last seen, just before Christmas 1974, along Highway 16. Police surmised that the 10th grader had been thumbing a ride before her brutal strangling. Today, near the spot where Monica disappeared, is one of 4 provocative anti-hitchhiking billboards dotting this infamous corridor. This one features a young girl, thumb up, flocked by ghosts hugging her legs. Canada's infamous Highway 16, the Highway of Tears, is a winding road that spans more than 450 miles. From the North Pacific coast of Prince Rupert to the inland city of Prince George and beyond. A desolate but stunningly scenic stretch that cuts through dense and heavy woods is the resting place of an untold number of women who were captured, murdered, and literally left to the wolves. In 2018, an 18-year-old woman was found dead off an embankment on Hudson Bay Mountain. Her body deteriorated and ripped apart after a 2-week feeding frenzy by wild animals. Authorities carried out what remained of the woman in a steel box. Her name was Jessica Patrick Blazer. it launched a special task force, Project Hahna, which widened the scope of victims to include those snatched from adjacent highways 5, 24, and 97. The families of those who disappeared outside the initial boundaries of the investigation hope that this new focus will produce new clues. As Project Hahna opens the door to new witnesses and leads from the routine highway drivers. But as of now, these killings remain unsolved. I feel like there are a lot of victims in that case, and that is why I haven't covered it, because I feel like it is a mountain of evidence. Next one is the Long Island Killer. I don't know that I know that one. Graveyard at Gilgo Beach. Help! There's somebody after me. A woman's voice pleaded desperately into the phone. They're trying to kill me. In an excruciating 20-minute 911 phone call, 23-year-old Shannon Gilbert begged the police for help. Earlier in the evening, the woman, working as a Craigslist escort, visited a client in the gated Long Island community of Oak Beach. Since then, she frantically ran to multiple houses, pounding on doors in vain, in hopes that anyone would save her. But help never came. After the resident of the last house refused to let her in, she ran off toward the waters of Gilgo Beach. Investigators initially believed she had become disoriented and got lost in the 12-foot-high marsh reeds. But after the year-long search ensued for Shannon Gilbert uncovered a murderous dumping ground, exposed alleged rampant police misconduct, and eventually revealed a current-day serial killer doing brisk business on Long Island. While searching for the missing woman, police found the remains of 4 other young women, all petite sex workers who had advertised their services on Craigslist, all dead by strangulation, each body wrapped in burlap. With so many details in common, they were given a group name, the Gilgo Four, named for the nearby beach. The search turned up Shannon's remains as well in a nearby marsh, but her more recent disappearance and murder would be handled much differently than those of the Gilgo Four. The official cause of Shannon's death was listed as undetermined. Authorities theorized that either she drowned or died of a drug overdose, but an independent autopsy found that her cause of death was clearly consistent with homicidal strangulation. Suffolk County officials emphatically stated they didn't believe her case was connected to the Gilgo Four, prompting a cruel back and forth between law enforcement and the murdered girl's family that would play out for years. That's horrible. Who The cases were linked together as the work of the Freeway Phantom, the first known serial killer to operate in America's capital. The killer left notes on his fifth victim, taunting the police to catch me if you can. They couldn't, and after a sixth girl was murdered, the killings suddenly stopped, as mysteriously as they began. That just creeps me out, guys. That's, 71, maybe the person's deceased now, but maybe not. Like, maybe he moved to Vallejo, California. I don't know. The West Mesa Bone Collector. I have had this case on my list for a really long time, but again, there's so much. In 2009, the largest homicide case in Albuquerque, New Mexico's history began when a dog walker in the West Mesa region, an elevated flat landmass with a view over the city, discovered a human femur. Over the next year, bones from 11 different girls and women who disappeared between 2003 and 2005, along with a fetus, were found by the Albuquerque Police Department near the same spot. The group burial pointed to the work of a serial killer, eventually dubbed the West Mesa Bone Collector. Investigators emphatically say they're still ruling out possible suspects, and no arrests have ever been made. Haylee, my good friend Haylee, the Empress ASMR, covered that case too. And this one. She's covered a lot of stuff I haven't covered. I try not to cover stuff other people have covered, but... Number 3, the Monster of Florence. It's this picture here. Number 3. Between 1974 and 1985, a serial killer roamed some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world to find his victims. Over a large area encompassing the hill country of the southeast and north of Florence, Italy, 7 couples, 14 people in all, were murdered while having sex in their cars. The couples were shot or stabbed. Some of the women also had items removed from their bodies. I didn't want to get graphic. Even after one of the longest and most extensive criminal investigations in Italian history, the case remains a mystery. Wow, I bet that's a really good case. The Butcher of Mons. Human remains were discovered in the Belgian region of Mons between March 1997 and April 1998, in garbage bags clearly visible on the roadside and channel banks. The systematic dismemberment of the bodies found inside the bags suggested an immediate nickname for the serial killer, the Butcher of Mons. In all, the body parts of 5 different women were found, distributed among 12 separate garbage bags. 3 prime suspects were identified, but the case remains unsolved to this day. I was smushing it together. Number 5, the alphabet murders. The unique common thread in this case was that the child victims all had double initials. The dead bodies of Carmen Colleen, Wanda Walkowitz, and Michelle Menenza were dumped in the towns near Rochester, New York, that also began with the same letters as their names: Carmen in Chile, Wanda in Webster, and Michelle in Macedon. Tragically, it's estimated that as many as 100 drivers likely passed Carmen running naked from the waist down after she briefly escaped her attacker. But the cars were traveling up to 70 miles per hour, and this was 1971, before cell phones. Whoever sexually assaulted and strangled these girls to death of rappers Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., and some have argued they have no intention to. As he was leaving a Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas on September 7th, 1996, West Coast rap superstar Tupac Shakur and his entourage, who were reportedly connected to the Bloods gang, got into a scuffle with Orlando Anderson, reportedly a member of the rival Crip gang. The fight was broken up before weapons became involved, but retribution came minutes later as Tupac sat in the passenger seat of a BMW 750IL, driven by Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight. As Tupac leaned out the window to talk to two women at a stoplight at the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Colville Lane, a white Cadillac pulled up next to them. An unknown gunman pulled a handgun out and fired repeatedly into the car, hitting Tupac 4 times in the chest, arm, and thigh. He was rushed to the hospital, but had to be put on life support, and died of internal bleeding just 6 days later. 6 months after, on March 9th, 1997, Tupac's friend turned bitter rival, Christopher Wallace, better known as the notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls, this is Biggie right here, met a similar fate. The East Coast rapper was sitting in a Chevy Suburban SUV at a red light at 12:45 a.m. after leaving a Vibe magazine after party at Los Angeles' Peterson Automotive Museum, when a dark, recent model Chevy Impala pulled alongside him. An unidentified shooter rolled down the window and fired multiple rounds from a 9mm handgun, striking Biggie 4 times in the arm, back, thigh, and hip. The last shot deflected up through his colon and liver, heart, and lungs, and although Biggie was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, he was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. Ironically, he was in town to film a video and promote his upcoming album, Life After Death. Tragic coincidence or something more? Well, it depends on who you ask. Ultimately, no one has been arrested for either murder, although there are many, many theories. Tupac and Biggie actually started out as friends after first meeting in 1993, but the two began feuding soon thereafter, and Tupac and his friends interpreted Biggie's 1994 song, Who Shot Ya?, as a diss track mocking a recent non-fatal shooting of Tupac that some thought Smalls may have been involved with. Tupac retaliated in 1996 with his own scathing diss track, Hit 'Em Up, which explicitly referenced Tupac sleeping with Smalls' estranged wife, Faith Evans, accused B.I.G. of copying Tupac's style, and threatened violence against Smalls and his entourage. Grab your clocks when you see Tupac, he rapped with chilling foreshadowing. Who shot me, but you punks didn't finish. Now you about to feel the wrath of a menace. Investigative journalist Chuck Phillips has stated he believes that when Tupac and members of the Bloods allegedly beat up Orlando Anderson on September 7th, Anderson reportedly demanded his fellow Crips retaliate. And according to Phillips's investigation, it was Biggie himself who provided the gun to do it, after previously offering the Crips $1 million to kill Tupac. Suge Knight, who was driving with Tupac the night of his death, is also at the center of many rumors about both murders. Some believe that the Death Row Records CEO wanted Tupac dead because the rap star wanted to switch to a different record label. Others assert it was Biggie that Suge ordered killed in revenge for Tupac's murder. Former LAPD detective Russell Poole, a lead investigator on Biggie's murder, believed the latter theory to be true. He even accused other LAPD officers of having connections to Death Row Records and conspiring with Suge Knight to commit the murder, and was ultimately ordered to stop his investigation. Poole retired as a result, telling CNN in 2011, "I think I was getting too close to the truth." shortly after Tupac's death under the stage name Machiavelli, a reference to Niccolo Machiavelli, an Italian philosopher Tupac studied, who was rumored to have faked his own death. A music video for a song released just 2 days after his death chillingly shows Tupac being shot after leaving a boxing match. Sure, the Machiavelli fake death theory has been largely disproven, but fans are still waiting, and that may include Suge Knight, who said in a documentary about the murders, "With Pac, you never know." For his part, Chris Carroll, a retired Las Vegas Metro PD sergeant who was the first responder on the scene and has been named as a potential killer in conspiracy theories, said he held Shakur's blood-soaked body and asked him directly, not knowing the song that started the rap feud, "Who shot you?" Shakur looked him in the eye and spat back, "F you." That's terrible. I'm sorry if you can hear my stomach grumbling, by the way. The Bob Crane case. So, fun fact about me, I worked with a doctor and he loved Hogan's Heroes. Every time we had lunch, we would sit in his office and watch Hogan's Heroes. And so every time I see anything about Bob Crane, I think about Doctor. So anyway, millions knew Bob Crane as the star of the 1960s show Hogan's Heroes, an iconic sitcom about Allied inmates in the German World War II prisoner war camp who outsmart the inept Third Reich officers. In front of the camera, Crane was the witty, bold Colonel Robert Hogan. At home, he was a husband to his high school sweetheart and dad of 3. Behind closed doors of his dressing room, he was apparently a sex addict. Bob Crane's dressing room was porn central, according to his own son, filled with Polaroids, negative, and films. He had affairs with several co-stars, and shortly after he divorced his wife, he married and had children with one of them. 2 children. Patricia Olsen, who went by the stage name Sigrid Valdis. He even dabbled with making homemade videos with various partners. His friend John Henry Carpenter, a Sony salesperson, helped him to get the necessary gadgets, and they bonded over their shared hobby. Crane's antics and proclivities were no secret in Hollywood, but no one was expecting him to end up in danger, much less brutally murdered. On June 29, 1978, after Crane missed a scheduled lunch meeting with co-star Victoria Ann Barry, she stopped by to check on him. What she and later police officers found was the lifeless actor's battered body, with an electrical cord tied around his neck and blood spatter on the walls and ceiling. Crane quickly became the prime suspect. Carpenter became the prime suspect. Crane, about to turn 50, voiced that he wanted to make some changes in his life. He had started pulling away from Carpenter, who got angry. The night Crane was murdered, eyewitnesses saw the two arguing at a club. Combined with the fact that there were no signs of forced entry wasn't as smooth. The two were set up on a studio-arranged date for her 18th birthday, and they married a year later, but filed for divorce after rumors of Wagner's infidelity. Wood had a tumultuous decade after that, falling into depression, overdosing on sleeping pills, marrying and having a child with, and then divorcing producer Richard Gregson. Wood reconnected with Wagner, and the two were inseparable once again, remarrying and having a child. But this romantic reunion and Woods' life were cut short in 1981, when the pair went on a weekend cruise to Catalina Island with Woods' Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken. On the night that they set out on their yacht with their captain, Wagner alerted the Coast Guard that Wood was missing. Her body was found the next morning floating close to the shore. Officials concluded she had accidentally stepped overboard while intoxicated and drowned, weighed down by a heavy jacket. Not everyone was convinced. Rumors pointed the finger at Wagner, and in 2010, the captain of the yacht that night and Woods' sister asked authorities to reopen her case, stating that Wagner had pressured him to be less than truthful during the initial investigation. Wood and Walken were flirting, he said, setting off arguments between Wood and Wagner. Wagner allegedly broke a wine bottle over a table before everyone returned to their rooms, at which point the captain heard a shouting match and then silence. Dr. Michael Franco, who had been the coroner's intern at the time, remembered finding suspicious bruising on Natalie Woods' body, as if she had been forcefully pushed or pulled into the water, and his boss told him to keep quiet. Though the Los Angeles sheriff confirmed in 2018 that Woods' case is undeniably suspicious, and Wagner was officially named a person of interest, Wagner was never charged and is staying mum. And until he or others come forward with the truth, the circumstances of Woods' drowning will likely remain a mystery. So sad. She was so talented. Now, I have covered the Superman curse on my channel, so I'm not going to talk too much about the death of George Reeves. Definitely check out that video if you're interested. Y'all know I love Superman so much, and if you're a Superman fan, you probably know this story, but I did a whole video on it. So, suicide or murder, the Thelma Todd story. She's so pretty. I don't think I know this one. Early film star Thelma Todd seemed to have it all. She had a great comedy career, growing successful in dramatic films and her own Pacific Palisades restaurant, adored by celebrities and tourists alike. She was in demand as an actress, and in her personal life was linked with several dashing Hollywood men. Ooh, I want to know who. But things took a turn when the actress was married in 1932 to Pascal Di Cicco, a movie producer and agent. Their marriage only lasted 2 years, but was full of frequent drunk arguments and rumors of impending divorce. In 1934, they did finally split, and Todd opened her second restaurant with her former lover, director Roland West. It was a success, but she didn't have much time to enjoy it. Just before Christmas in 1935, she was found dead in her car in a closed garage owned by Roland West. The coroner ruled her death was a result of accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, but her friends had other theories. One of these friends was West's estranged wife, Jewel Carmen, a co-owner of the restaurant. Todd was also linked to infamous mobster Lucky Luciano, who wanted to open a casino in the restaurant. When she told him that would happen only over her dead body, witnesses say he replied, "That can be arranged." Others pointed the finger at Todd's ex-husband, who reportedly wanted revenge after their divorce. Even her mother was suspected after she announced a plan to build a mansion, without any mention of how she planned to pay for it. But the most damning evidence that pointed to her carbon monoxide poisoning being a murder rather than suicide was obvious, and found on Thelma Todd herself. She had a broken nose, bruises around her throat, and 2 cracked ribs. Despite these brutal signs, the grand jury still ruled her death a suicide, though though there was no explanation for what might have caused her injuries. Almost 90 years later, no answers have emerged. That sucks so much. So, I think this is the last of this section that I will not cover, but the 27 Club, I covered this as well, and it is about numerous, mostly rock musicians that died at the age of 27 from anything from suicide to freak accidents. So I will also link that one down below when I post this on my channel so you guys can check it out. But don't judge me on my older videos, because I gotta tell you, some of them are really, really, really bad and really, really fuzzy. Now this, we'll talk about this in a second, but this one over here, Marilyn Monroe, everybody knows about Marilyn, and I will be covering her case in a longer Gone Too Soon video. I just don't know when. She's definitely on my list, so. But first, let's talk about Peter Ivers. I don't know who Peter Ivers is. Let's see. Depending on the crew you ran with in Hollywood in the 70s or early 80s, you might have heard of Peter Ivers for any number of things. The host of the popular New Wave Theater, as the genius songwriter behind the In Heaven from Eraserhead's soundtrack. I don't know who that is. As a bizarre conceptual artist who came out on stage in a diaper to open for Fleetwood Mac. The list goes on. Ahead of his time was a descriptor frequently applied to the artist, musician, and entertainer Peter Ivers. Tragically, Ivers never got to enjoy the mainstream success that seemed to be just right around the corner. In March of 1983, when he was 36, his bloody body was discovered by a neighbor. He had been bludgeoned to death. Next to him sat a large hammer that usually stayed in the building's communal kitchen for protection. There were no fingerprints on the hammer, but stereo equipment was missing from a shelf. If there was more to see, investigators may not have gotten a chance. The crime scene was poorly secured, making it easy for friends and strangers alike to walk through the building and apartment. The missing stereo equipment, a rough neighborhood, and an unlocked door with a weak lock led police to believe the simplest conclusion. Ivers was killed during a burglary. Ivers' friends learned later that a burglar had since fallen to his death in the area, but the theory couldn't be proven, and some suspected someone else entirely. David Jove, Ivers' boss at New Wave Theater. Those who knew Jove described him as everything from offbeat to scary, or worse, a loose cannon, a cocaine abuser, and completely obsessive. Friends say Jove was worried about Ivers leaving New Wave Theater, but would he go as far as to kill him? The world may never know. No suspects were officially named, no arrests ever made, and law enforcement never took their investigation much further than the simple burglar theory, leaving his friends to wonder what really happened, and what could have been had his career had a chance to blossom. Marilyn. She turned heads everywhere she went and charmed audiences in every role. She became known worldwide for her stunning smile, voluptuous curves, and sultry, breathy voice. Her relationships with famous men, marriages to Yankee star Joe DiMaggio and playwright Arthur Miller, and rumored affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Bobby. But behind her elite sex symbol status was a complicated woman who had a difficult personal life. Baptized Norma Jean Baker, the future star was raised by foster families after her mother, a schizophrenic who was in and out of psychiatric hospitals, realized she couldn't raise her. She married for the first time at age 16 in order to escape from the foster system. So, English. Stories from friends and Monroe's diaries reveal insecurities, abuse, fears of disappointing those she loved, mental health struggles, insomnia, and a reliance on barbiturates to sleep. It makes me so sad. So sad. In the final months of her life, also a good friend of Jackie Kennedy, and allegedly she was also one of JFK's mistresses. Rumor has it that Meyer would visit him at the White House when Jackie was away. He even wrote a letter asking her to visit him in Boston or on the Cape just a month before he was assassinated. Could it have been sheer coincidence that Meyer was murdered just weeks after the Warren Commission report was released, which concluded that President had been assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone? Meyer was allegedly critical of the Warren report, and some people believe the CIA was actually behind both deaths. One of those people is a writer, Peter Janney, who details his conspiracy theory in the book Mary's Mosaic. In fact, he's asserted his theory that his own father, a senior CIA official, was in on it. Another writer, C. David Heyman, claims that Meyer's ex-husband confirmed as much when he was dying. Fueling the suspicion, the chief of the CIA counterintelligence reportedly broke into Meyer's art studio just hours after her death to look for her diary. Others do believe Mary Meyer was in fact killed by the original suspect, Ray Crump Jr. Witnesses put him at the scene, and his history of mental instability and subsequent federal prison stints have led some to think the jury made a mistake acquitting him, though whether he acted of his own accord or was set up remains a point of debate. For those seeking answers, the search may never be over. Without a trace, the ongoing search for Jimmy Hoffa. Now, does this count as an unsolved murder? Okay. Mysterious disappearance, a rumored mafia hit with no body, and perhaps after decades there's an answer in sight. Or just another long line of false leads. On July 31st, 1975, James Jimmy Hoffa, one of the most powerful American labor leaders of the 20th century, and believed by some to have deep ties with organized crime, went missing. He was last seen in the parking lot of a restaurant in Detroit, but he apparently vanished without a trace. The timing was interesting. 2 weeks earlier, federal investigators discovered that hundreds of millions of dollars had been stolen from a pension fund of the Teamsters, America's largest union, which Hoffa headed. He had recently served 4 years in prison for mail fraud and jury tampering, and he'd been trying to establish himself post-prison as the Teamsters president. The Teamsters had reportedly worked with the mafia while Hoffa was at the helm, so investigators first looked to mafia bosses Anthony Caicalone and Anthony Provenzano, who had reportedly been set up to meet with Hoffa the day of his disappearance. Some witnesses say they saw Hoffa get into the backseat of a car outside the meeting spot that day, but even after hypnotizing suspects and witnesses to gather more evidence, the search was fruitless. Painstaking searches of a landfill, a horse farm, a driveway, and beneath a swimming pool all turned up nothing, but plenty of theories persist. A former and he didn't recognize the shooters. He then also succumbed to his injuries. Within 40 minutes of this shooting, another woman was murdered and 4 other people were threatened or robbed in 3 separate attacks, all in the same general area. 2 men in a cream-colored van were reportedly involved in each of the incidents, but they were never found. Number 3. Krista Helm. Hollywood party girl and actress Krista Helm longed to be in the spotlight and would do anything to find fame, her friends recalled. Sadly, that fame came at a price. After landing a starring role just a few years into her career, Helm moved to Hollywood to seek more opportunities and exposure. But other people may have feared her growing profile. According to friends, she kept a diary with her that cataloged the men and women she'd slept with in Hollywood. Could someone in that diary have been the reason that she sent a letter to a childhood friend that stated she had gotten into something deep and may disappear for a while? One night after she left a party to go to her agent's house, her car apparently came to a sudden stop. Investigators say she argued with someone after getting out of the car and was attacked. Residents heard the horrifying screams, and she was found dead with 23 stab wounds. Investigators believe she knew her murderer, given the violence of the attack and number of wounds, but despite the case reopening 30 years after her murderer, there are still no new suspects, leads, or answers. That's terrible. Jack Nance. He looks familiar to me. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Jack Nance was an actor, and he was as troubled as he was talented. Longtime collaborator of David Lynch, Nance was best known for playing the lead in the filmmaker's directorial film debut, Eraserhead, as a gang member in Blue Velvet, and as a series regular on the original Twin Peaks. But off the set, his personal life was full of ups and downs. He had a temper, a serious drinking problem, though he did eventually get sober. While in rehab, he met and fell in love with and married Kelly Van Dyke, who sadly relapsed and hanged herself after a fight with Nance on the phone. He started drinking again, and the day before he died, he was reportedly drunk when, at 5 in the morning, he got into a verbal and physical altercation with 2 men at the Windjells Donut House. That's sad. The next day, at lunch with friend and actress Catherine Case, Nance complained of a headache, a result of the fight, he thought. That night he was found dead. Detectives and the medical examiner found that he had a subdural hematoma, a blood alcohol level of 0.24%, and injuries consistent with blood and force trauma. Did he fall in his head, or did he die from his injuries in the fight? We may never know, and the men he fought with were never found. And the last one to close out part 2 of our video, Ronnie Chassin. According to witnesses, there had been nothing unusual the night that film publicist Ronnie Chassin died. After a party at the W Hollywood Hotel, she retrieved her car from the valet and headed home. But as her car slowed to make a turn, she was hit by 4 bullets. Less than an hour later, she was pronounced dead. 8 months later, police closed the case, naming the murderer as Harold Smith, an ex-convict who shot and killed himself when confronted 2 weeks after the incident. It was a robbery attempt gone wrong, police said. But no shell casings, live rounds, or weapons were recovered. No video footage was placed him at the scene, and no actual robbery motive was ever established. The gun Smith used to kill himself and the gun used to murder Chassin were not a definitive match, and there was no record that her car was ever dusted for fingerprints on the passenger side where the shots reportedly came from. Independent documentarian Ryan Katzenbach, who's been looking into the murder, isn't sure where he stands on Smith, but he has found some connections between Smith and Chassin, all centering around one person, who several of Chassin's friends suggested in interviews could have played a role in a hit job. The official police line may have that the case is closed, but her friends are still looking for answers. This case, I'm telling you, when I first got into true crime, I dug into this one way before I ever started a channel. I want to see the Black Dahlia be solved. Definitely let me know down below if you could see a case classic movie plot. It is the tragic true story of a death of a real 22-year-old woman named Elizabeth Short, who had moved from Boston to Los Angeles with dreams of becoming a Hollywood star. Like so many other aspiring actresses, she worked as a waitress in town while trying to catch her big break. But somewhere along the way, she crossed paths with a homicidal monster. When her mutilated corpse was discovered on the morning of January 15th, 1947, newspapers nationwide knew the sordid details of Elizabeth Short's murder would sell a lot of papers, so they milked the young woman's death for all it was worth. The papers nicknamed her the Black Dahlia, mixing together Elizabeth's distinctive love of sheer black clothing with the title of a popular movie from the time, a murder mystery called The Blue Dahlia, starring Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake. For 35 straight days, front page headlines and news stories tracked the progress of the LA Police Department's investigation and speculated on the dark motives of the mysterious murderer. The police inquiry actually got off to a quick start thanks to an innovative precursor to the fax machine called sound photo. Just 56 minutes after the LA Police Department sent the victim's fingernails to the FBI, they were able to identify Elizabeth Short from prints taken when she applied to work at a California Army facility 4 years earlier. A posted reward of $10,000 brought in a flood of tips, and almost instantly the police reportedly had 150 suspects and more than 500 voluntary confessions, all of them false, except one. A week after Elizabeth's body was found, someone claiming to be her killer made a phone call to the police to tell them they should expect souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail. The mysterious confessor started communicating through one of the newspapers, the Herald Examiner, sending a series of letters, some of which were handwritten and some made of letters cut and pasted from magazines. True to his word, the anonymous fiend also included a few of Elizabeth's personal effects to prove his authenticity. Sadly, the FBI wasn't able to lift a single useful fingerprint from any of the murderer's letters or envelopes, nor could they identify the handwriting. The killer seemed to be toying with both the police and the press. Soon after the murder, as many as 400 sheriff's deputies and 250 California State Patrol officers joined the LAPD and FBI to try to solve this crime. But over time, their leads went cold. Eventually, the letters from the killer stopped, and even today, 75 years later, no one has ever been charged with the murder of Elizabeth Short. But the tragic case of the Black Dahlia did have one positive outcome. Elizabeth's death helped propel the California State Assembly in 1947 to create the nation's very first sex offender registry. The Cleveland Torso Murders. I don't know that I know this one. Although it's still a popular tourist draw today, during the years of the Great Depression from 1929 to 1939, Cleveland, Ohio was the convention center of the nation. In 1936 and 37, more than 11 million people, nearly 9% of the entire country, visited the Great Lakes Exposition, celebrating Cleveland's centennial. One of the expo's most popular exhibits, gruesomely, was a plaster cast of a severed head, the so-called tattooed man, an unidentified victim mysterious transients. Others, like the infamous tattooed man, remain anonymous to this day despite the cast of his severed head being viewed by millions of people. Enter Elliot Ness, who was already an international celebrity for his high-profile work as a federal Treasury agent who battled political corruption and busted Al Capone's notorious mafia empire in Chicago. Ness signed on as Cleveland's public safety director in 1935 and immediately set to work to revamp and modernize the police department that had become known for corruption, laziness, and political patronage. The torso murderer was already at work when Ness took over the reins of the police department and fire department, and Ness was soon discovered that it was a lot easier to nail an infamous mobster than it was to nab a secretive serial killer. Lead police investigator Peter Merlo worked the case for 6 years, believing that the killer was a transient who rode the trains back and forth across western Pennsylvania. Hundreds of leads were tracked down and numerous suspects were interrogated, but every trail came up empty. County Coroner Dr. Samuel Gerber had a different theory. The precise dissection of the bodies indicated to him that the murderer must have had some kind of medical training. Ness focused his attention on Francis Sweeney, a doctor from one of the most prestigious families in Cleveland. Sequestering Sweeney in a hotel room, Ness grilled the well-known doctor for weeks on end, even subjecting him to one of the earliest lie detector tests. But Sweeney never cracked. He steadfastly proclaimed his innocence. Finally bowing to the political pressure from Sweeney's cousin, who was a congressman, even the relentless Ness had to admit there was insufficient evidence to tie Sweeney to the murders, and released him. And then on August 16th, 1938, 2 more bodies were discovered within eyesight of Elliot Ness's office, mocking him. And he had had enough. On August 18th, Ness turned all of his frustration loose on what many believed to be the hiding place of the mysterious murderer, Kingsbury Run, the large homeless shanty town where the first torsos had been discovered. Under his explicit direction, police units raided the area, scattering the residents and taking 63 different men into custody for questioning. The cops then set fire to the encampment and burned the entire area to the ground, displacing hundreds of transients who lost all of their meager possessions in the inferno. Ness was soundly criticized by the media and his political opponents for his brutal tactics, but the results were ultimately what the public remembered. After the destruction of the homeless encampment, the murders came to an end, and the city could finally move on in peace. There are still many theories about who the torso murderer might have been, but nothing conclusive ever surfaced. All we know for sure is that Elliot Ness never had the satisfaction of slapping handcuffs on the killer, and the case of the torso murderer is still one of America's most disturbing unsolved murders. I knew it. Okay, so the next part is Jack the Ripper. I am not going to read that because I have a 4-part series on Patreon about that. Definitely check it out if you haven't. I found like the coolest book at the thrift shop and read the whole thing on my Patreon. It's a pretty disturbing case if you don't know it. beach's seawall, his legs extended in front of him, ankles crossed. The Somerton Man, as he was quickly dubbed by the press, was a white male, 40 to 50 years old, with an athletic build and sun-tanned arms. He was clean-shaven and dressed well in a sport coat, a crisp white shirt, creased pants, and shined shoes. All the labels had been removed from his clothing, which led some investigators to assume they'd all been purchased secondhand. There were no obvious trauma marks on his body, and later inspection showed no wounds or injuries whatsoever. The only unusual discoveries made by the attending pathologist, John Matthew Dwyer, was that the man's pupils seemed small and oddly shaped, and he had blood in his stomach. Ew. This led Dr. Dwyer to theorize that the victim had somehow digested an irritating poison, but a series of follow-up tests found no identifiable... Oops. Too many pages, Shannon, come on. Poisons in the dead man's bloodstream or organs. Some investigators wondered if the Somerton Man could have been poisoned with digitalis or strophanthin, two deadly poisons that did not leave any trace evidence in the body. The manner of his death was completely undetermined, so police debated, was this even murder, or could it have been a suicide? The Somerton Man's personal effects offered few clues. An unused train ticket to Henley Beach and an unused bus ticket to St. Leonard's, a comb, a pack of juicy fruit, and a packet of cigarettes and matches. The police were able to track down the man's suitcase at the train station, but its contents, some clothes, sharp implements, and few odds and ends led them nowhere. No one ever came forward to identify him, and he didn't match up with any known missing person. Investigators were stumped, but then a more thorough examination of the man's clothing revealed a small slip of paper tucked into a hidden pocket along his waistband. Printed on it were the words Daman Shud, Persian for "it is finished." Investigators soon realized these words were the last words of a famous book of poetry called the Kubiyat of Omar Khayyam. The slip had been torn out of someone's copy of the book. Did these words reflect the final thoughts of a jilted lover contemplating suicide, or were they a death sentence imposed by a jealous rival? No one knew. A few months later, the case took another bizarre turn. A man came into the station with a copy of the Kubiyat of Omar Khayyam. I'm sure I said that differently each time because I have no idea how to say it. The last sentence that contained the ominous words had been ripped out. Police excitedly confirmed that the torn section found in the Somerton Man's waistband matched with the ragged page of the book. But the man who turned the book over to the police claimed to know nothing about the case except what he'd seen in the newspaper. The man said he and his brother-in-law had taken a trip to the beach the day after the Somerton Man was discovered. He said that they had parked the car a few blocks from the beach, and when they returned, they both noticed the book on the backseat of the car. But they didn't say anything because they each assumed the book belonged to the other. The book sat in the man's car until the men eventually connected it to the media reports about the investigation. Further inquiry confirmed the man's story about how he became in possession of the book. The book itself yielded other clues. Written inside were 2 phone numbers, along with a mysterious jumble of words and numbers that appeared to be some kind of code. The phone number led nowhere. The second number brought them to a woman's home near Somerton Beach. Jessica Thompson claimed to have given the book to a man named Alfred Boxall when she served as a nurse during the Second World War. A hot lead. Police tracked down Boxall and interviewed him, but to their requested to allow investigators to conduct a more detailed DNA testing, but the Australian police are no closer to finding out the man's identity or the mysterious circumstances surrounding his death, whether he was a murder victim or a suicide. Either way, he seems to have met a quiet, lonely end. It's kind of sad. Is this the end already? Might be. Okay. 5 more unsolved historical murders. Well, let's see if I've covered any of these. Yes, I have. I should have known. Lizzie. I have literally watched Haylee the Empress ASMR's video on Lizzie Borden probably 100 times. Potentially before I even covered it myself. And then I covered it for Spooktober as the finale 2 years ago. I think. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, okay. Number 1, the Tara Calico case. September 20th, 1988 was a perfect day for a bike ride. So, 19-year-old Tara borrowed her mother's pink bike and took off, riding along a highway in Belen, New Mexico. She was never seen again. The only clue was a few broken pieces of her Sony Walkman discovered along her normal biking route. She simply vanished. Months later, a Polaroid photo of a young woman who resembled Tara was found in a convenience store parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida. The girl was pictured next to a boy in the back of a van. Both of them were apparently tied up with tape over their mouths. A mark visible on the young woman's leg matched a scar on Tara's leg. Sadly, Tara and the pink bicycle have never been found. Haylee also covered that case, and it's a very long video if you're interested. The boy in the box. This case has recently been solved, so they should really I bought this last year, so. In 1957, in Philadelphia, a college student found a bruised, naked body of a boy, 4 to 6 years of age, inside. It was a JCPenney box, and he had been bludgeoned to death. The newspapers were quick to tell his story, and thousands of tips flowed in. Even advice from a psychic who pointed an accusatory finger at a nearby foster home. All those leads turned out to be a dead end, and police were never able to identify the boy or his killer. To this day, he's remembered as America's unknown child. Why didn't they put a picture of him here? That's kind of sad. They just did that. That's lame. Lame. Anyway. The next one is Lipstick Paul. I covered this one. Carolyn Wasilewski. In Baltimore, 1954, a railroad engineer found the bruised and partially nude body of 14-year-old Carolyn along some railroad tracks. Her skull had been crushed, but there was no other evidence of sexual assault. The name Paul was written on her thigh. Police found blood stains and some of Carolyn's personal items near her home, a full 8 miles from where her body was found, indicating that her body had been moved. One promising suspect, Ralph Garrett, lived near the location where the murder apparently occurred. Unfortunately, he hanged himself before the police could verify any connection to Carolyn's murder. And the case of Lipstick Paul remains unsolved. They didn't use her photo either. I am disappointed in you, magazine. There's a beautiful picture of her, I know, because I used it for my thumbnail. Lizzie Borden with an axe. Some people say Lizzie Borden got away with murder. During the morning of August 4th, 1892, in Fall River, Massachusetts, Lizzie Borden's father and stepmother were brutally hacked to death with a hatchet. Stepmother received 19 blows and her father 10, rendering them both unrecognizable. Lizzie reported finding the bodies hours later and summoned help, but during murders, it caused an uproar. Her case quickly became a national story, and emerging women's rights defense groups rushed to her defense. The prosecution based their case solely on circumstantial evidence, and in the end, a jury acquitted her of all charges. No other suspects have ever emerged in her case. If y'all would like to hear me finish reading the book about her trial that I have, I will gladly do that as well. The last is Marilyn Shepard, who is absolutely beautiful. In 1954, Dr. Samuel Shepard was convicted of murdering his wife, Marilyn. But after 10 years in prison, and with the help of new attorney F. Lee Bailey, the U.S. Supreme Court set aside the verdict in the landmark case that helped define the role of the media in high-profile trials. The court determined Dr. Shepard was denied a fair trial because of the prejudicial media coverage. The state of Ohio decided to retry him for Marilyn's murder in '66, but this time the verdict went the other way, and he was found not guilty. Shepard remained a free man until his death in 1970 from liver failure. His wife's killer has never been identified. This case, really isn't one that I got terribly into. I don't know why. I think because I have always just thought that, well, I don't want to spoil it, so I'll talk about it at the end. I'm sure you know this one, though. So this is the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. And I am a little unsure as to why it is in the Unsolved Murder Mystery magazine, because she's still missing, but maybe it will explain. She was an honors student and a member of the the dance team and Bible club. She volunteered. She had a part-time job at an organic food store, and she was headed for the University of Alabama on a full scholarship. In the spring of 2005, Natalie Holloway was about to cross the final threshold into young adulthood with the classic details about her death for money. No trace of Natalie has ever been found, and the last moments of her life remain unknown. Partial justice did catch up to Vandersloot, though. He is serving a 28-year prison sentence in Peru for the murder of Stephanie Flores, a young woman he pled guilty to killing on the 5-year anniversary of the day that Natalie Holloway went missing. Y'all, I believe he definitely killed her and got away with it. I think that's why I never really got into that case. By the time I discovered it, so much information was already known that it wasn't a mystery for me to puzzle out. So I will not be reading about the yogurt shop murders. I covered this case on my channel, and it is just one of those completely bizarre ones. These 4 young girls were killed, but I go into the whole thing on my channel, and I will try to remember to link it down below for you. This case I don't think I've ever heard of, so I'm quite curious to read about it with you. The Joseph Barend slaying. Bloodied and battered guitar with broken strings has been sitting in police custody for 33 years. There's a picture of it right here. Can you see it? For all the stories that strum their way out of Joseph Joe Barron's beloved red Epiphone. I added a couple letters. It's Joe's swan song that is yet to be sung. Whatever happened in the hours leading up to the fatal bludgeoning of this kind and gentle musician on August 19th, 1989, and just who is responsible for the gruesome act is still unknown. Joe left Madison, South Dakota for Minneapolis in 1971 to launch his music career. He was a gifted, classically trained pianist who studied at the MacPhail Center for Music. Joe is best remembered for his keyboard and vocal work with the Flaming O's, previously known as Flamingo, a new wave pop punk band that released 7 albums and an EP. The band's hit songs, I Remember Romance and Stop, both got national airplay and charted on the Billboard magazine's Hot 100. And the band was also one of the first groups to record an MTV music video, which memorably featured Barend playing on his keyboard atop a giant pile of scrap metal. They toured the United States extensively, opening for Ozzy Osbourne, Motorhead, and 38 Special. They even played a festival in Colombia. It was during this time at a show these magazine articles, the words blur together, at a show in St. Paul, Minnesota dance hall called the Prom Ballroom, where Joe met a local bartender named Barbara. The two of them fell in love and got married while the band was recording their 3rd album. Instead of wedding rings to mark their marriage, Barbara bought Joe a new keyboard. But the Flaming O's were beginning to get a taste of fame, and as the 80s era of hard partying began to weigh heavily on Barbara and Joe's relationship, they amicably began living apart. Whatever our personal relationship ended up as, this man loved me more than any human has ever loved me in my life, Barbara later told the Minnesota Star-Tribune. Joe left the Flaming O's in the late 1980s, but remained good friends with his former bandmates. He eventually circled back to Minneapolis to start a new music project with a singer-songwriter from California. But this dream was short-lived. On August 19th, 1989, Barron's brother found Joe beaten to death with his own guitar inside of his brownstone apartment on Columbus Avenue. The police arrested an unnamed suspect but quickly released the man due to lack of evidence. The investigation ultimately didn't go any further, is Minneapolis authorities say they need the public's help to move this case forward. Witnesses, evidence, or any supporting details could help them finally bring this gifted musician's murderer to justice. That's so sad. Like, what could you have possibly had to gain by murdering this man? It's just... So, I covered Elissa Lamb on my channel as well. That case is one of those that, depending on what day it is or what mood I'm in, I could go either way on what I think happened in that case. So definitely, I'll try to remember to link it down below. I sway between foul play and murder in that case, so alright, this video is going to be really short. I apologize. 5 more modern murder mysteries. I'm gonna take my contacts out really fast, guys. I apologize. Hold on. Oh, dang it. My door is open. Dang it. Okay, I'm so sorry. I always forget when I'm reading these magazines and looking down, it makes my contacts super blurry. Alright, so, you may recognize a couple of the faces on these pages. Let's see, I have covered a couple of these, but I'm going to read them to you anyway. Is that it for this? Devil's in the details, it says. They just have these other random articles. Okay, 5 more modern murder mysteries. The first one is a case that I've covered on my channel, and I desperately need more information. Abigail Williams and Liberty Germain. In 2017, 2 best friends went missing while hiking through the historic trails of Delphi, Indiana. Tragically, Libby, age 14, and Abby were later found deceased. But Libby's smartphone gave authorities recorded audio and video of an unidentified man who was following them. A brief clip of his voice reveals a chilling command. Guys, down the hill. Investigators were able to put a face to the voice by using Libby's video to create a sketch. But unfortunately, his identity remains still a mystery, so if you have not listened to the podcast titled Down the Hill, I really encourage you to do that. I think it's like 10 episodes, and it definitely revealed to me a lot of details about this case that I did not know. And I got so wrapped up in it, I was completely disappointed when it was over. And when they made an arrest in this case, the first place I went was to that podcast, not to a news site. I went to the podcast to see if they had released a new episode, because I knew that they would tell me across the border. Within days, the 31-year-old was found dead near a construction site in Knoxville, Tennessee. An autopsy determined he was killed by a blow to the stomach from an unknown heavy instrument. His fanny pack was filled with jewelry, gold and platinum, was strangely untouched, as was the nearly $4,000 in various currencies scattered on the ground around his body. Investigators still have no motive and no suspects. Now, if you're familiar with this case, the weirdest part about this case for me was the car key thing. This kid rented a car and drove across the border, and he stopped. I'm not familiar with all of the details, but he stopped for like gas or something, and then he went back out to the rental car, and his rental car wouldn't start because he had like keys to a Toyota when he was driving like a Honda. They would not start. But then when they found him deceased, the keys to the actual car, like the legit, Toyota keys or Honda keys, or I can't remember what I just said, but were on the ground, like by him. And that is so weird to me. Like, I don't have an explanation for that. And things I can't come up with a reasonable explanation for really kind of stick in my mind as extremely puzzling. So I'd love to know what you guys think about that case as well. The next case is Jeanette De Palma. On September 19th, 1972, a dog in Springfield, New Jersey returned from playing in the woods with a horrific object in its mouth, a human arm complete with white fingernail polish. In a nearby quarry, the rest of 16-year-old Jeanette De Palma's body was found. She was face down and fully clothed, a small branch under each foot, and a carefully crafted rock formation surrounded her body. Suspects at different points have included a transient, someone driving a red Ford, and a serial killer. I did cover this case in more depth also on my channel for Spooktober last year. Aimee McVickme, oh my gosh, I can't say that one. 10-year-old Aimee was last seen alive at the Bay Village Square Shopping Center in northeastern Ohio on October 27th, 1989, along with a man police believe is her killer. He had called Aimee several times that week, promising to take her shopping so she could secretly buy her mom a present. Aimee's body was later found by a jogger in a remote field. She'd been stabbed to death. A curtain and a blanket containing Aimee's hair was recovered. A stranger's DNA was later extracted from her body, but there were no positive matches to identify her killer. That's so sad. I've thought about covering that one a couple of times, but there's really not a lot of information on it. Number 5. Chandra Levy, a Washington intern, vanishes. On May 1st, 2001, 24-year-old intern Chandra Levy, who was allegedly having an affair with married Congressman Gary Condit, went running in Rock Creek Park and never returned. Metro DC police botched the search and didn't spot her remains near a trail for a full year. Scrutiny centered on Congressman Condit, with about 100 reporters camped in front of his house, despite him having an alibi of having been in a meeting with Vice President Cheney at the time of Levy's disappearance. Although an informant named a man who had already assaulted 2 women in that same park, it took an in-depth investigation by the Washington Post 7 years later to pressure the police into finally investigating Enigma Quantipeak for Levy's murder. He was quickly arrested and convicted, but in 2016 had all the charges dropped when it was revealed police corrupted evidence and the informant had lied under oath, and the prosecution had withheld evidence from the defense. Chandra Levy's murder case is still open and unsolved. So, I want to thank you guys so much for being here always looking at these types of magazines and things, and it was actually kind of fun to do. I really had to make Sean kind of flip the videos right side up. If you're watching this on my channel, my poor patrons, the first section of this video was completely upside down, and I just didn't notice. I was trying to get it up and get them some content because I appreciate them so much. And I just posted it without, like, I didn't edit anything out of it, and I posted it upside down. So hopefully by the time you're watching this on my channel, it is completely right side up so you can see some of the pictures. I would love to have a better kind of overview set up for more things like this. I'd like for it to be a little bit more clear, but as we know, my camera doesn't really do close-ups that well. I don't know why it doesn't focus close up. Needless to say, it's not a horribly expensive